Hi, this is Mike again, and I have Lee Campbell with me today. He served in Vietnam, and I'm very interested to hear his story. Hi, Lee. How are you today?
I'm great, Mike.
Good, good. So I want to start off by you telling me a little bit about your childhood and then, how you came to serve in Vietnam.
Sure. I was born and raised in Johnson City, Tennessee, and of course went to elementary school and junior high and high school here. When I was about 9 years old, we moved out near a golf course, which was Johnson City Country Club, and I started caddying there when I was about nine, and caddied there through my freshman year in college. Learned the game of golf there, uh, played pretty well, was able to earn a scholarship to East Tennessee State University. And so I was a member of the golf team and actually captain of the golf team for a couple of years there. And I got drafted between my junior and senior year there. So that was pretty much how I got into golf.
I thought, though, Lee, people who were in college got drafted too, because I thought you got an automatic deferment.
No, it wasn't automatic. Um, there were different requirements, and it seemed like the local draft board here needed more and more draftees as the Vietnam War was heating up. So just about every quarter they would change the requirements, and so anyway, they finally got me because I had been in school for 9 quarters, I believe, and they said I should have 135 quarter hours, and I had something like 120 because every spring the golf team would be gone for the first 2 weeks of the quarter, and we would take lesser loads like maybe 10 or 12 hours. So I was about a quarter behind in hours for that time. So I got drafted.
So how old were you when you went to Vietnam?
I was 21.
So you're 21. Had you traveled at all before throughout the US or in other countries?
No, no, just traveling with the golf team, mostly in the southeast.
Okay, so here you are, this 21-year-old, and then you're going to Vietnam. I mean, how much training did you have in the US before you actually went to Vietnam?
How much what?
How much training did you actually have?
Well, I was drafted, of course, in September of 1966. Did basic training, which was about 8 weeks, and did AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, both of those at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And then I was selected from my platoon to go to leader school. So I went to leader school. That was about 3 additional weeks, 30 days at home, and then on my way to Vietnam.
And do you remember your feeling? I mean, when you were, getting ready to go as you were traveling to go to Vietnam?
I think I had mixed feelings. I know when I was drafted, the Vietnam War was going on, and during all my training, I kept thinking, well, it might be over by the time I actually have to go. But of course it wasn't. It was 9 more years from that time before it was actually over. So I didn't really know what to expect. Um, I felt like the Army had taken me out of my career and that sort of thing, but I decided that I would try to make the best of my 2 year commitment. And I had had 2 years of ROTC training in high school and another 2 years in college. So I was ahead of a lot of the guys on basic army stuff. So I did pretty well. Uh, Actually, they a couple of times wanted me to go to OCS, which is Officer Candidate School, but that was extending for about another 10 months, and I just wanted to do my 730 days and get out. So
So you were in Vietnam for about 2 years then?
No, no, 1 year, 1 year in Vietnam, a total 2 year commitment in the Army.
And so tell me I mean, what was it like? You know, I've read stuff, I've of course seen movies. It looked like a really horrible, difficult situation.
It was. I didn't really know what to expect. Vietnam is a beautiful country from the air. Um, I landed at Bien Hoa Air Base in South Vietnam. Uh, from there, I was trucked directly to the 90th Replacement Battalion. Spent a day or so there, everybody wondering where they would actually, what unit or what part of the country they would be assigned to. And I was assigned to the 199th Infantry Brigade in Long Binh, which really wasn't, I think it may be 10 miles from Long Binh, where the base camp was. Of course, I was infantry, and so it was after about 5 days in country training, we went out in the field, and we would stay there probably on an average of about 30 days, and then we would come back into the base camp for a couple of nights and refurbishing equipment and whatever for a little break, and then right back out. In the field was where we were was mostly rice paddies and jungle. So we just spent 24/7 out there for about 30 days at a time.
Now I mean, I know the weather conditions. I mean, it's raining a lot, very humid. There's all kinds of insects and such. I mean, how did you deal with all of that? I mean, what did you sleep at all? I mean,
That it's really hard dealing with the elements there. We would be on patrol, of course, and a typical day would be up shortly after sunrise. We would eat breakfast of sea rations, and we would patrol all day, mostly walking through either jungle or rice paddies. And for about every hour, we would get about a 10-minute break. We would do that all day until late in the evening, and we called it search and destroy missions. We were kind of like bait. We wanted to walk around and search and destroy until we made contact. Then we could find out where the enemy was. We would on a typical day, then we would be in a secondary position, maybe an hour or so before dark, and after dark, then we would move into what we called a primary position. Obviously, we didn't want to give away our position, so after dark, we would get in a primary position. Then we would divide into groups, usually about 3 to a group, set up a perimeter, put out. Most of the time we didn't dig in. We only dug in most of the time if we were going to be in an area for a long time. So most of the time we were moving every day. So we didn't dig in the majority of the time. But then we put out claymore mines, come back, 3 guys normally to a position. So somebody would start and it would just be sleep 2, watch 1, sleep 2, watch 1, sleep 2, watch 1. And after 30 days or so, I mean, it's very hard. You're very tired. You're carrying a lot of weight all day. And you mentioned rain and stuff. Well, Vietnam has 2 seasons. They have a rainy season, which lasts about 6 months, and it rains several times every day and then stops. Then they have a dry season where it doesn't rain for about 6 months. So it's 2 different kinds of seasons. But the trying to deal with just what you had to do every day, day in, day out, be dog tired by the time you could try to go to sleep, and somebody tapping you on the shoulder, waking you up, hey, it's your watch. I mean, it's just really hard, and just going on for day after day after day for for a month. I think 6 weeks is the most I ever remember being out at one time without going back into the base camp.
So how, you said what you carried was pretty heavy. I mean, what kinds of things would you carry and how heavy was it?
I've tried to figure that a couple of times, and I think it was around 80 pounds. Uh, I was an RTO for most of the time I was there, and the radio itself, I think it's an ANPRC 25. We called it the Prick 25. It was about 25 pounds, then a couple spare batteries. Then we had, of course, the ammo. I carried 220 rounds of M16 ammo. I had 2 canteens and a water bladder, which is 4 quarts of water. I carried, when I was an RTO, I carried 2 hand grenades, 2 smoke grenades. Then, of course, we had to carry all of our C rations. We had our rucksacks. So all of that, plus the M16, I figured around close to 80 pounds.
But Lee, if you stayed out for 30 days at a time, I mean, wouldn't you exhaust your supplies?
Yes, we were on 3-day resupply. So that's for food and water and ammunition and whatever. Now, if you had a firefight, they would resupply you in ammunition, but not food and water. So my very first time out in the field, I ran out of water, and of course it was very hot, and I didn't really know how to conserve, and so I was just drinking water and drinking water. I ran out. Well, I soon found out nobody would share their water with you. So I was, on the second day, I was beginning to kind of panic because I found out real quickly that you can go without food, but you can't go without water. And so anyway, one of the guys just pointed out a bomb crater that had muddy water in it. And he said, you need to get your water there and put iodine tablets in it and drink it. So I sat down in the bomb crater, submerged my canteen, and just took my hand and tried to brush out the bigger brush that was going into the canteen, put iodine tablets in it, and you'll drink it. I drank it. So that was about the second day of a 3-day. From that point on, when we would be on patrol, when we get an hourly break, I would take 1 sip of warm water. The water, there was no cold water; it was warm. So I learned how to conserve that way. But I still have issues with that today. Seeing water being wasted, or just turning on a faucet and just leaving it running for no purpose. So I still have issues with that today, but that was my very first traumatic experience in Vietnam.
Yeah. And so, as you said, you were kind of bait. Were you involved in a lot of firefights? Or, I mean, obviously you were involved in firefights. And what do you remember about those?
I remember thinking my very first time before we made contact, wondering if I could actually kill somebody or whatever, and I had thoughts about that. And the very first firefight, when we were mostly ambushed, and the rounds were cutting off tree branches and leaves above my head, and they were falling. I found out real quickly I could fire back, so I did. But as far as how many, we might go several days without, we called it without contact, and then we might have 2 days in a row, or 2 or 3 days in a row. Then we might go another week without contact. So it was just very infrequent. Most of the time we were ambushed, and normally the Viet Cong didn't fire on us unless they thought they had the advantage. So mostly it was a surprise. We didn't see them often. They were well hidden in jungles and in tunnels and all kinds of things. So it was uh, very unusual finding an enemy that you can hardly see.
So you had a number of friends, I'm sure, who, I mean, were killed, right, in action. I mean, how did you how did you all kind of deal with that? Again, you're very young guys, probably haven't traveled a lot, and now you're overseas in Vietnam, you know, killing people and watching your friends get killed.
Yeah, it's not easy, but down deep you're glad it wasn't you. And but you wonder about that. Why him, not me? Why, whatever. So you just you just dealt with it. It was physically so tiring. You depended on each other to for your very lives, and you just went on. You were sorry it happened. Some were close. Some were just you just knew them. We operated mostly in platoon size operations, which was about most of the time maybe 25 guys or so. Uh, and you knew everybody. Some you were more close with, and the ones that you were closer with hurt more. But you were you had to search and destroy every day, just you know, trying to just get through the day, and um, you just persevered.
Hmm. Can you tell me some stories about some of your friends that fought with you in Vietnam?
Sure. Um, Jim Rothblad, of course, who you had an interview with. He was a medic in second platoon, and so we had a firefight on April 23rd, 1967, and it was one of the bigger ones. It was probably about 6 hours long, where a normal firefight might be 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most, and it would be over. Uh, but this one was pretty much 6 hour deal. And so some of the couple of the squads on the way in from the night ambush had taken some sniper fire from the Viet Cong, and we were operating out of a company perimeter, and so the company commander decided we're going to take the whole company and try to stop this. And our squad was, I'm not sure if we were actually coming in from patrol or going out on patrol, but we got the call to assist. So we met up with the rest of the company, and it was a lower dike that was dry, and then I mean rice paddy that was dry, and then an upper rice paddy that was flooded with wet, muddy, and whatnot, and it backed up to a river. And so anyway, I was on it was a sweep, which was just a long line sweeping back through the rice paddy toward the river. And as we were going from the lower rice paddy to the upper rice paddy, there was a ravine there, maybe 30 feet across, and it was dry, maybe about 6 foot deep. And for some reason, I was the far right guy on this sweep. So as I started to enter this ravine, going from the lower paddy to the upper paddy, a large python type snake slithered in from the other side. And the reason I was able to see it is it was white or albino or something like that. So anyway, just kind of directly in front of me, maybe 30 feet in front of me, it slithered down from the one side. I was getting ready to go in from the other side. So I veered to the right, and I don't know, maybe 20, 30 feet or whatever. I readied my M16 for the snake, but I never saw it. So anyway, so I come out into the upper paddy, and we're still on this sweep, and I'm still the guy on the right side. But by moving further to the right, it put me very close to a dike, which was the edge of the rice. There were dikes that surrounded the rice paddy. And of course, you're not supposed to walk on dikes or whatnot, because that's where the enemy booby traps and whatnot. It's easy walking, but you're not supposed to do that. But because I had moved further to the right, then it put me very close to that. So we continued to sweep, and I just continued close to that dike. And then there was a large explosion, blew me into the air, maybe about 6 or 8 feet into the air, blew out a large section of this dike. And of course, I landed back in the mud, which is at the very start of this firefight. So getting to my story about Jim, but the company commander had, of course, seen that. He was in kind of the center of the formation. He and I think one of his RTOs, one of his radio operators, came over, and I think Jim Rothblatt may have came just shortly after that, and anyway, rolled me over and back in the mud, in the muddy rice paddy, to see if I was wounded. And fortunately, I wasn't. But anyway, that's my story with Jim Rothblatt. But when I made contact with Jim about 5 years ago, I had not even remembered his name. I couldn't have told you who our medic was, but making contact with him was how I found out that it was him who probably had actually rolled me over and back in the rice paddy. Anyway, it blew out a large section. From there, we had a 6-hour firefight. I was on one side of the dike throwing hand grenades, and you can't throw a hand grenade very far. And they were firing. We fortunately had only one KIA, one killed in action that day. I think we had 6 wounded, including the company commander. So Jim Rothblatt had a very, very busy day as a medic trying to take care of those casualties. And a little bit more to that story, we were in that firefight. I had 220 rounds of ammunition. At that time, I was carrying 4 fragmentation grenades. I threw all of those. I was getting down to my last magazine or 2 of M16 ammo about the end of the firefight. And at one point, somebody called when they finally were able to get the dust off choppers in there, the medevac choppers in there. Then somebody called for help to load the casualties. So with all this firing going on and whatnot, I was trying to crawl through the muddy rice paddy back to where they were loading casualties, and trying to stay below the level of the dike because we were still receiving fire. And as I was crawling, I had a leather watch band on my watch. My watch band broke, and my watch fell into the mud of the rice paddy. And I'm trying to retrieve my watch and not get everything dirty and all that. Anyway, somehow I got there and helped with the casualties, came back to the dike, and at the very end, they called in jets. And when the jets came in, they were targeting, they would dive down and they were targeting the area where I was throwing hand grenades. And that scared me probably as much as anything that day. They would dive down, fire off for maybe, I think they fire about 6,000 rounds a minute. They would fire off maybe a 4 or 5 second burst of ammunition, and they just come out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden they were there, and they made 5 or 6 passes, I think, doing the same thing and firing all these rounds, 400 or 500 rounds maybe of 50 caliber ammunition, and it was very scary. But anyway, after the jets came, it was finally over, and we got out of there, like I say, with 1 KI and 6 wounded.
So when you say a 6-hour firefight, is that just constant, like shooting and grenades?
Yes, it's maybe it's not. Maybe you're up and you fire off a burst of M16 or whatever, and throwing grenades and different people firing, and then you duck back down and you take incoming, and then you get back up again and fire again. Like I say, we generally never saw the Viet Cong. They were well hidden, and so So yes, it's firing back, different sections. We had a whole company there, so we had a large perimeter within this dike that we were firing, and they were backed up against the river, and different people, uh, doing different things. So
So you gave me a very specific date as to when this happened. I mean, are your memories of it, I mean, so strong still?
oh, crystal clear. Just names. You forget names and that sort of thing, but no, it's crystal clear what I saw from my perspective.
Yeah.
Now, different people, and it's been discussed over the years, but different people saw it from a different perspective or from their own perspective. So they maybe were involved in different things. I saw things they didn't see. They saw things I didn't see. But in reconnecting with some of these guys, then you try to put this puzzle together. And Jim Rothblatt and I have done a lot of that in addition to a few other guys that I'm in contact with.
What are some of the other stories that you can tell me just about yourself and, either the fighting or the good memories, that you have of being with people your age? I mean, tell me some more stories.
Uh, well, you want another firefight story or?
Yeah, please. I want to hear a few stories from you.
Okay. The most traumatic day for me was July 2nd, 1967. And that's the day I was wounded in a firefight and thought I was going to die. Um, we had a company perimeter, and our company probably had it was probably not at near full strength, but it had about 100 guys or so. But we would mostly operate in platoon search and destroy missions out of that company perimeter. So second platoon that was on a 3-day sweep, and we all hated the 3-day sweeps. I mean, 3-day sweeps were constant, just no break at all. And anyway, we were on the third day of this sweep. We had not made contact for the first 2 days, but we had crossed streams and through jungle and rice paddies, and we were really worn out. So we came to this stream. It was getting late afternoon, maybe 4 o'clock or something like that, and we come to the stream crossing. The stream is probably maybe 50 feet across, and we did rope crossing. So guys would swim across with a rope tied onto a tree or something, and then guys could do the rope crossing so they wouldn't, obviously, it was too deep to wade across or whatever. So we would do it. So everybody was just about dog tired. I was an RTO at this time, and so anyway, I'd put the radio down, and I'd kind of volunteer because I was RTO. I wasn't in the normal rotation for swimming across creeks doing rope crossings. So, but I volunteered. All the guys were pretty tired, and so anyway, I decided I would do the rope crossing and swim across. And so it was very. I found out that swimming that far with your boots on and everything was very hard, and I wondered if I was going to make it across. But anyway, I made it across, and we all get across, and we move on past. There's a wooded area to the right, and we moved just a little ways past this wooded area, and so we set up a perimeter. We'd taken a break. We set up a perimeter of 3 guys and in 3 or 4 positions we had, and I was with a squad leader. We were sitting kind of in the middle. We set up a perimeter, and there was the wooded area, and we determined that we were a little closer to the company CP than we thought, according to the map. So we were just going to take it easy. Every time you did a stream crossing, you had to take your boots off and take your shirt down and do kind of a buddy system to check for leeches, and because they'd get on you and get full of blood in just no time. But so anyway, I had my boots off, trying to dry my feet out before we went into the night ambush. And we had identified a primary position, and we were sitting there, and I think guys were probably eating dinner, which was sea rations or whatever, and just resting a little bit. And we thought we were going to have an easy night, and then a short trip back to the company perimeter. And as it turned out, the company perimeter was just on the other side of this wooded area, maybe maybe a few hundred yards, but we didn't realize that. But so anyway, we had this perimeter sitting there, and I was in the center, and this rice paddy was dry. So I was kind of in the center with squad leader, and there was a perimeter of 3 or 4 of positions with 2 or 3 guys each, and all of a sudden the firing starts, and I mean it's intense. And anyway, so my squad leader, Sergeant McHenry, in a scuffle to take cover, he lost his steel pot helmet, and I had mine on, but we were kind of pinned down, and we were in the prone position, side by side, and I turned my radio up on its side, trying to get our heads behind it. So I was on the left, he was on the right. He didn't have his steel pot on, I did. So this fire, and the rounds, when they go by your head, you can hear them burning or crackling, almost like eggs frying. So it's very, very traumatic, but it's just like eggs in a skillet frying is what they sound like when they whiz by your head. So we're laying there, and I've still got the radio, and I'm calling for Miller. Miller was one of my best friends. He was a black guy, one of my best friends there. He was an M60 guy, which was our main firepower in the squad. And I mentioned that we were on a platoon sweep, but sometimes there were 2 squads. So sometimes first squad or second squad would kind of be on the same mission, but they wouldn't exactly be together. So anyway, it was a squad by itself. There were about 10 or 11 guys there total. So anyway, I'm on the radio, and I'm hollering with this firing's going on. I said, Miller, get the machine gun firing, and just nothing. We were not returning any fire. So it wasn't just us that were, that wasn't just Sergeant McHenry and I that was pinned down. It was Miller and the rest of the guys too. Nobody was returning fire. So I'm hollering, I'm calling the platoon leader, I'm calling the company CP, trying to get anybody. Nobody would respond. And as it turned out, my radio had taken, after this firefight was over, I turned it on, my radio had taken 3 direct hits. So that's why I couldn't reach anybody, but of course I didn't realize that. So anyway, I'm still calling and hollering at Miller, and so I don't know how many, maybe at least 3 or 4 of these burst where we were pinned down. And finally, Sergeant McHenry hollered, "Oh my God, I'm hit. And I got hit at the same time. And as we were laying in a prone position, his right foot was kind of the furthest to the right, and my left elbow was sticking out furthest to the left. So on the same burst we got hit, and I said, "I'm hit too, Sergeant Mac," or whatever. So anyway, there were several bursts after that, and then the first thing I heard was the M60 machine gun open up, and as it turned out, Miller, who was the M60 guy, had been killed instantly at the very first burst of fire. But another guy, Daniel Toro, a Puerto Rican guy, had made it to his position and opened up on the M60. He later came to our position, he bandaged my arm, helped Sergeant Mack. He was shot, as I mentioned, through the right foot. We finally got up from our position and made it about 25, 30 yards away to a dike, which put the dike between us and the wooded area. And so Toro and I were taking Sergeant Mack and got behind the dike. And when I laid down there, I felt a little bit safe because the dike was between us and firing from the wooded area or whatnot. I found out later on, after reconnecting with Jim Rothblatt, that we didn't get a message and that the company was also firing into that wooded area from the other side. So we were also taking friendly fire in addition to whatever fire that was coming out of whatever fire that was coming out of the wooded area or whatnot. But when I laid there, it was a sunny day. I looked up, this firing is still going on, but it's getting more sporadic. And I felt, like I say, a certain amount of safety having that dike between me and the incoming fire. And when I looked up, the sky was blue. I thought, I could just be laying out in my backyard at home. It's a beautiful day. So the next thing I knew, the gunships came in, and the helicopter gunships, and so they worked over the area or whatnot, and then the firing become less and less, the incoming fire, and then the dust off chopper came, and so they hollered for us to get to the dust off chopper, and of course I didn't know that Miller at this point. I didn't know that Miller had been killed, but so I think it was Toro or somebody came back and helped me get Sergeant Mack. He was hobbling, of course, on one foot, and we got him to the dust off chopper. And when I got there, that's when I saw Miller was already loaded into the floor of that chopper, and he was so swollen that he looked like he was 9 months pregnant. He had gotten shot, and his stomach was so swollen up and that's when I knew, of course, he was dead. Anyway, we got to the chopper, got Sergeant Mack in, and then I got in, and as we were getting in, then we gave our supplies to the guys who were still there, and so anyway, the hardest, we gave food, we gave ammo, everything. The hardest thing for me to give up was 1.5 quarts of good water that I had nursed for 3 days because of my experience with running out of water, and I still had 1.5 quarts of good water. So anyway, so we're sitting there on the bench type seat, Sergeant Mack and I, and Miller is lying in the floor at our feet, and we had a fairly short chopper ride to Tan Son Nhut Air Base there in South Vietnam, to the heliport there. And that's another interesting story from there on. I don't know if you want me to tell it or not.
Yes, please continue.
We landed at the heliport, and there was at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, there was an awaiting Jeep, and I call it a Jeep ambulance truck there. And so when the helicopter, there was a couple of guys there to assist, and they got Miller off, and there was another guy and me were helping Sergeant Mack kind of hobble over to the Jeep ambulance truck. So anyway, they got Miller in and then loaded from the back, and then we got Sergeant Mack in there, and so I started to hop into the ambulance truck, and as I said, I got shot through the arm, and by this time my bandage was streaming down. It had come halfway loose and was streaming down almost to the pavement there, and I started to get in, and the guy in the ambulance truck just kind of pushed me out and shut the door, and I thought, well, I'm doing okay, so he wants me to go around and get in on the passenger side. So as I head around, it pulls out and leaves me standing there in the heliport. By this time, it's getting kind of dusky dark, and they just pull off. So here I'm standing there. But so I look over, and there's a building maybe 50 feet away or something there, and there's a guy standing there, and he starts walking toward me, And as he come over there, he was an Air Force major. And he said, "Son, weren't you supposed to be in that?" He was standing there watching the whole thing, I guess. He said, "Son, weren't you supposed to be in that ambulance?" I said, "Yes, sir. I got shot and I need to get to the hospital." He said, "Wait right here." So I did. About 2 minutes later, around comes this sedan and with a driver, and in it is an Air Force Major General, 2-star, and with his driver. And he said, he got out and said, "Son, get in. We're going to take you to the hospital." So I started to get in the back, but that's where the general sat. So he said, "No, you get in the front." And all I can think of is I've got no boots on. I've got mud all over me. I got a bloody bandage streaming down to the pavement. And the general's driver has got this sedan spit shined, in and out. And I'm just thinking all this mud, he's going to have to clean this thing up by the time we get there. Anyway, we drove over and to Third Field Hospital. And on the way, the general asked me how I was, what unit I was with, where I was from, the general things. So we arrive at the emergency entrance of Third Field Hospital in Saigon, and I'm doing okay. I think the rounds that went through it went inside one and out the back, and must have got some nerves because I wasn't hurting all that bad. It's kind of like a bad cut, it kind of eases off after a while. And so anyway, we got there. And we pull up and there's just nobody there, basically. So, the general is, he's mad. He said, "Wait right here, son. I'll be right back." He gets out, goes through the emergency doors. And back then we used to call it blowing smoke. So anyway, and it was kind of funny after I had time to reflect back on it. And out comes a wheelchair, a stretcher, 4 or 5 guys. I mean, it's just like, and all I have is a gunshot wound through the arm, and I'm walking and everything, no boots, of course. But anyway, he wished me well, and and he was on his way. So they get me on in, and they're little partitioned off area there, and they're checking my arm for wounds and all that, and doing this and that. And so they pull back the curtain, and they said, "Do you know this guy?" And of course, that's Miller laying there. And so anyway, of course, he had dog tags. I don't know why why they couldn't have checked, but anyway, I told them everything I knew about him, and they closed the curtain, and so that was the last time I saw him. But I went on to surgery, had surgery about midnight. But after they checked everything out, they sent me to the shower, and I had a hot shower. The first hot shower I had since I'd been in Vietnam, and probably only the 4th or 5th shower total since I'd been in Vietnam. We only got about one a month when we go back into the base camp. So that was wonderful. I must have stayed in there for an hour. He did. You want me to go on?
Please.
They did surgery sometime up in the morning, and so anyway, I was asleep from the surgery all the next day until sometime the following morning. And I woke and my arm was in traction, and they'd done surgery and whatnot. And the guy beside me said, "Well, they tried to wake you, but they came by, and when I woke, they had the Purple Heart pinned to my pillow, and they said they tried to wake you, but they couldn't." And so anyway, I found out in a day or so that they were going to send me to Camp Drake in Tokyo, that I was going to have another surgery and therapy there. So, and it was when I got there, I went in traction, got to to Camp Drake in Tokyo there, and they took the bandages off, and when I looked at it, there was a big oval gash on the inside, and then another one just as big on the outside of my left arm, and it was stuffed full of gauze, and so it was a big, ugly looking gash just stuffed full of gauze, and I found out they had to do that because of infection. So the second surgery I had was to close the wounds, and it was weird. They didn't use stitches like you would think of stitches from an injury. They did wire, like chicken wire, and they had about 4 or 5 of those, about an inch or so apart, and they just twisted it together and then they bandaged around. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but I had the second surgery there, had therapy there, and then after 2 or 3 weeks, I was back in Vietnam.
Amazing story. Amazing story.
Well, part of it was funny, but the part about leaving stranded out there and the general and all that, you know.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you could find humor in that very, kind of desperate, very dangerous situation, I think is good. It says something about you.
Yeah. But not at the time. I didn't
Yeah.
find humor in it at the time. It was later when I had time to reflect back on it.
Yeah, of course, of course. Did you ever, so your friend Miller passed away and others, did you ever talk to any of the families when you came back to the United States or write to them or?
Another interesting
Yeah.
story, if you want to hear it, about Miller. Um, when I left Johnson City, headed to Oakland Army Base in California to be sent on to Vietnam, I, I flew, and on the way, I met a girl who got on the plane in Nashville. And I was a golfer, she was a golfer. Uh, anyway, ended up that you would, in Vietnam, you would write to anybody that would write you back, especially in the field. So this girl would write to me, and I would write to her, and she ended up sending me a picture of her. She happened to be a model, um, which is out of my league. But anyway, she would write to me, and she sent me. We were back in base camp, and she had sent me like a 4x6 picture of her in a modeling pose. She modeled, I think, for some department store or something. I'm not really sure, but anyway, we're back in the base camp, and back in the base camp, I was in the same tent. I guess it's about a 12 or 16 man tent, in the same tent with Miller. And when we would be back in the base camp, uh, Miller, he had this album. Miller was married and had a couple of kids, and he would pull out his album and show us pictures of his wife and kids, and every time, you know. And so anyway, I got in this picture, and I didn't want it to get messed up. So I said, Miller, how about sticking this in the back of your album so it doesn't get messed up when, you know, we're headed out in the field like the next day or whatever. And of course he did. And I doubt that I'm sure he didn't think he was going to get killed, and I doubt that he put any explanation on that picture of a white girl in his album. And when he got killed, I'm sure they sent that album along with all of his other belongings back to his wife, possibly with no explanation. And I don't know when I remembered that. I don't know if it was while I was still in Vietnam or just years later, but I remembered that, and I thought I would try to get in contact with his wife and explain that picture. But of course, we didn't have the internet back then, and you know, I really just never did. But anyway, that I'm sure she got it. So I think I told you that once I left Vietnam, I didn't do anything pretty much. I just tried to forget Vietnam for the most part of about 47 years. About 5 years ago, I became interested in what I call revisiting Vietnam, which is not actually going back there, but just trying to find out more about it and the guys I served with. And I got in touch with some of these guys. And through those connections, we actually, Jim Rothblatt and I actually were able to find Miller's wife.
Oh,
This was about 2 years ago. And we are still in contact with her, maybe once, twice a year, something like that now. But we sent some stuff to her, and I got a chance to ask her if she remembered that story that I just told you, and she didn't, of course, remember anything about it. So to me, I got a chance to clear my conscience on that. And probably maybe somebody had gone through that album and removed that picture before they sent it, whatever. It seems like the kind of thing you would remember if you were,
yeah,
if your husband had gotten killed and you wondered if
yeah.
something was going on there. So anyway, that's my story on Miller.
Was she, was his wife, I mean, was she thankful that you and Jim got in contact with her?
Yes, of course, she was remarried at the time, and but she had her husband. I'm not saying given permission. Her husband had said it was okay for her to have contact with us about her first husband, and he has since passed away to about a year ago. And she's from Indianapolis. Miller was, of course, was from Indianapolis, and so anyway, that's rewarding just to be able to to talk with her. We sent her everything she was interested in actually putting together an album of things we sent her, and so I've collected a lot of information. So has Jim, and we sent her a lot of things, and she actually put together an album from the things we sent of Miller. But
Yeah.
one more thing, I'll do one more thing about Miller is when I first became interested in doing this, I could only remember Miller. Couldn't remember his first name. I remembered about maybe 6 or 8 guys totally, only their last names. When the traveling Vietnam Wall came to Johnson City several years ago, I went looking for him to look him up, and all I had was Miller. I thought his name was James E. Miller because there was a James E. Miller on my Purple Heart orders. I thought that was him. As it turned out, that wasn't him because I looked him up. I was looking up the wrong name, obviously. So I found out later on that his name was Edward Clinton Miller, and the James E. I thought that was him. So I was looking up, trying to find on the wall James E. and that wasn't him. And I looked up another guy, Bradley Carson, who was killed sometime before I was wounded on July 2nd. And I couldn't find him. I found out I knew Carson. I was looking for a Carson that was killed sometime in May of '67. And later on, I found out his name was Bradley Carson, and they missed the date he was killed was listed as September. And on his information, it says date certified, whatever that means. So they got the wrong date on his KIA date. So I didn't find him, and whatever. Those were two of the guys I was really looking for on the traveling wall that came through here. But of course, later on, I figured out all this stuff once I got back into this and contacted guys, and we start putting information together, and I've learned a lot, in these last 5 years.
Can you tell me a bit about your jacket?
Yeah, my shirt.
Or is it a shirt or jacket?
Yeah, it's my fatigue shirt. I thought it might be appropriate for our interview. Since in the last 5 years, since I've become interested in Vietnam, I've started going to the, we have ceremonies here about once a year on Veterans Day. And we've had at the local VA, we've had the 50th anniversary stuff of Vietnam and all that. So I wear it once a year, along with my Vietnam cap. And so it's an Army fatigue shirt, and I don't know what.
Is it? It's not what you had in Vietnam, though, is it?
No, it isn't. I don't have any of the junk. We had jungle fatigues over there. This is just what I had, what I wore when I got back from Vietnam, basically. And I never wore it before about 5 years ago. And like I say, about once a year, I'll put it on at one of those ceremonies or something.
Okay. I want to, okay, Lee. So we're going to end things for today, but we're going to have another interview with you and explore a few more stories. And then also, when you came back from Vietnam and how that all went. So thank you for today. And I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Oh, okay, Mike. Thank you.